Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today, on behalf of ArthaPoint, I'm going to go ahead and take a session on time series analysis. We are going to see some of the major macroeconomic variables, and we will also try and see how these macroeconomic variables can be used in various platforms. How can we use it for petrol price detection? How can we use it in the stock market, etc. And once I tell you the process of going ahead and running the time series analysis, you can very well take this analysis forward and you can use the same analysis to go ahead and understand what is, how can you apply the same time series analysis to different processes of finding inflation rate, finding unemployment rate in the economy, etc. So let us go ahead and let us begin with what is time series data? How does it differ from different data sets? What is the basic notation and terminology of it? Now, to begin with, we must understand what is a time series data set. So a time series data set is basically nothing, but it is a sequence of information. So for example, the sequence of information can be sequence of the share prices. The sequence of information can be the information related to inflation on quarterly basis. The sequence of information can be the information related to GDP on yearly basis. All this is the time series data. So we just want one sequence of information, and that sequence of information should be over a period of time. It should be over a time period. So there is certain things that we must remember whenever we start the analysis of time series modeling. And one such thing is the time period. This is very important. Now, what is a time period and how do I define that in time series modeling? A time period is basically whenever you have the same interval for the data set. So if you tell me today to collect the data set on stock market, I know that the stock market works from Monday to Friday. So my time period would be business days and it would be a daily data set. If you tell me to go ahead and collect data on, let's say, inflation, maybe government collects data on inflation on quarterly basis. So my time period intervals would be a quarterly basis. If you tell me to collect data on the sales of an organization, then maybe the organization taps its sale on monthly basis. So the time period would be a month. What has to be remembered here is that this time period must be consistent. If I start collecting data on daily basis, I must have it on daily basis throughout. If I start collecting data on monthly basis, I must have it on monthly basis throughout. This should not be the case, that for first few observations, it is on daily basis. And then for the next few observations, it is on monthly basis. That will ruin the time series modeling. So that is not something which we want. Now, another thing which is important in time series data set is the frequency of the data. Now, what does it mean by frequency? What do we mean by that? By frequency, we are asking how often we are going ahead and recording the data set. That is known as the frequency of the data set. So for example, I just drew this diagram to show you that I want to go ahead and measure the speed of a racer. He's trying to practice, he wants to compete, and every day he comes and he, measures the time he takes to complete one lap. Then that is the frequency of the data set. How many times did I took his trial? How many times did I check? How many times I recorded his values of how much time he took? That is the frequency. So based on this, we revamp the definition of time series modeling and we say that all time periods must be equal and clearly defined. That would result in constant frequency. Now, some examples of time series data set are finance, in which you see it in the stock market, in the asset prices, in macroeconomic factors. Then you have e-commerce. Like, for example, a lot of you would now be, when you intern, you would see a lot of jobs in the social media sector. And majorly, the jobs are about checking how many times people visit your website, how many new users are there in your website, how many times was your website searched. So this is again an example of time series modeling. The next is business transactions. So for example, how many sales took place, how much revenue was collected on monthly basis, what has been the inventory level. This is also time series modeling. So time series modeling can be used in various aspects. Now, why do we want to go ahead and why do we want to do a time series modeling? The answer is that usually whatever patterns we observe in time series modeling, they are expected to persist in the future. So if I see that there is this player who is reducing the time that he takes to complete a lap, that will further reduce in the future. If I see that every summer I have more sales of ice cream, that will persist in the future. So whatever patterns you see today, because we expect the same pattern to be seen in the future, that is the reason why time series modeling can be used. Main features of time series data. Now, 3 features we have studied till now. First, you should have time periods. The time periods should be consistent. Second, you should measure the frequency, how often something takes place. Third, you should see a particular pattern. The pattern can be increase in the sale of ice cream every summer, increase in the sale of gold every festival days, increase in sale of gold during marriages. So there should be a pattern in the past which we are expecting to be persisted in the future. Now, because of this thing, that what existed in the past can help me detect what will happen in the future, we usually go ahead and use time series modeling. So one beautiful example of forecasting is the weather forecasting. Whatever weather existed in the past, on the basis of that, we can go ahead and we can forecast what would be the weather tomorrow. So this is again an example of time series modeling. Now, supposedly, I want to go ahead and I want to visit a beach. Then I want to go ahead and I want to predict what will be the weather tomorrow. See, suppose I give you the weather of 5 past days, but I don't tell you which weather or what temperature was on what date. I tell you on one day it was 40 degree, 38 degree, 30 degree, 28 degree, 42 degree. But I don't tell you that, which temperature was on which date. Then you will not be able to predict what will happen tomorrow. Because only when I map this temperature to a particular day, I can see whether over time the temperature increased or decreased. So it is not only important to know the temperature or to know the values of the past days, it is also important to know on what day what was the temperature to predict what is going to happen in the future. Now, time series analysis can also be used in the stability of the financial markets and the portfolio efficiency. So a lot of us For example, if you're dealing in the stock market, you would have seen that I can use what happened in the past, what the prices of the share prices in the past, what happened when there was a recession in the past, to predict what will be the share price in the future. So time series can very well be used to understand the stability of the financial markets and efficiency of the portfolio. These are few of the other applications of time series modeling: economic forecasting, stock market analysis, demand planning. Now, what is demand planning? So, for example, let me give you an example. We talk about Amazon and Flipkart. Now, what Amazon does is that it has to maintain a warehouse where it will be stocking all the goods. Now, this is changing on a real-time basis. Every hour, the stock of Amazon is going out and its stock is reducing, and it has to understand how many raw material has to be kept. To do that, it is very important to forecast the demand. I must know how much is going to be my demand tomorrow so that I can go ahead and fill my warehouse today. So demand forecasting is also a very important part of time series analysis. In fact, in economics, demand forecasting plays a very important role. Now, since you're from an economics background, you would have seen that we have always seen and found the equilibrium wherever aggregate demand equals to aggregate supply. But I don't know what would be the aggregate demand in my economy tomorrow. But if you ask me to predict the price level at equilibrium, I will form something which is known as an expected aggregate demand curve. So I will create a forecasted value of what would be the aggregate demand in the future to predict the future equilibrium prices. This is again where I can do a time series modeling to predict what should be the total demand in the future.